Good evening. My name is Kevin McGee, and tonight I would like to tell all of you about someone who is very special to me. Your living is determined not so much by what life brings to you, as by the attitude you bring to life. Not so much by what happens to you, as by the way your mind looks at what happens. How many people here know someone that they would call a visionary? Someone who they really look up to and try to live up to. My grandfather has not just been a person, a family member, a father, and a role model to all those around him. He has been a visionary. I have known my grandfather since I was 3 years old, and I've lived in the midst of his warmth and lightheartedness for my entire life. Today, I would like to attempt to the best of my ability to paint you all a picture of the kind of person my grandfather was, and the ways that he taught me to be resilient, to always look on the bright side of life, and most importantly, to love all of those around me. Let me start to paint the picture by telling you how resilient my grandfather was. My grandfather taught me through his actions to always be resilient and to persevere no matter what happens. My father had to persevere through many setbacks in his youth. When my grandfather was only 3 years old, both of his parents were alcoholics, and his father was already out of the picture, and his mother was found dead in a gutter on the street. Despite these familial setbacks, my grandfather grew up with foster parents and turned himself into an extraordinarily successful man. He became a very successful salesman during his time in the 1950s, and even became part of the $1 Million Roundtable, which is a select group of the top salesmen in one's area. He also enlisted in the Korean War, where he performed improvisational sketch comedy routines for the troops. He continued his side career of show business until he was 70 years old. It's very impressive. Although my grandfather eventually got divorced, he also got married and had 2 wonderful children who he loved until the day he died. With the example set by my grandfather, I myself have attempted to live my life with strong-headed resiliency. Despite small size and inadequate skills in my youth, believe it or not, I pushed myself for 3 full years in the weight room until I became the strongest player on my high school varsity football team. I have also since then enrolled at Penn State University, where I bust my butt for every A that I can get. Working hard is very easy when I think of the hardships my grandfather faced as a child. Now that you know how tough my grandfather could be, let me give you a taste of his softer side. My grandfather showed me every day of his life to always look on the bright side of life. Despite years of drunken childhood abuse and depression, my grandfather grew up into a man who could put a smile on anyone's face. He was always the life of the party at all of our family functions, and he carried with him a good-heartedness that always made it a joyous experience to talk with him. My grandfather also had a sense of humor that is best described as being out of this world. When he was in Korea, one of the football players asked him, "Hey, Kelvin," my grandfather's name is Donald Kelvin, by the way. He asked him, "Hey, Kelvin, what would you do if we were ever under attack? Grab a microphone?" My grandfather responded to this by saying, "What would you do? Throw a football?" Yeah. My grandfather's favorite joke, his favorite joke of all time, was about the man in a mental ward who was told by his psychiatrist that he was too tense. The man responded to this by saying, "I'm a teepee, I'm a wigwam, I'm a teepee, I'm a wigwam." My grandfather's positive outlook and humor have also greatly influenced my own life. I try to carry with me an optimistic outlook on everything I do. How many people here work full-time while also taking this class? Yeah, it really sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Sorry.
It's very hard, very difficult, but I try to view the challenge as a fun opportunity instead of an obstacle, with the best of my ability. I have also performed in my high school comedy show called Laughing Stock, where I participated in sketch comedy routines that were very similar to what my grandfather did during the war. Among the fantastic traits that my grandfather possessed that I've discussed so far, none have been as influential on me as his ability to love everybody equally. My grandfather taught me through his everyday actions and antics to love everyone around him. My grandfather loved every member of his family with all of his heart, and he greatly enhanced all of our lives. My grandfather, on Christmas every year, my grandfather performed a series of skits for the entire family, and he dedicated a part of each skit to each family member. It always made for a great Christmas. Due to his hard work and effort throughout his entire life, my grandfather left our family $60,000 in his will that he intended to go towards his grandchildren's future college desires. Even though his wife put him through a living hell that led to an eventual divorce, my grandfather also kept in amazingly good touch with her, and even took her and her new husband out on a cruise later in his life.
Wow.
Not many men would do such a thing, but he did. My grandfather also viewed everyone as equal, and he held no judgments toward anyone. He once told me and my sister that no matter what we did or how we turned out, he would have an equal amount of love in his heart for each of us. This has really touched me until this day, and it really drives me to keep going in what I do. After the countless years of warm-hearted love and laughter that my grandfather showed me, I returned the favor when he needed family the most. On January 3rd, 2010, my grandfather was diagnosed with skin cancer that was deemed terminal. I was determined to give him the best last days of his life. Every day after school, my mother and I would drive up to his home in Philly, where I performed some skits of my own, which had my grandfather in fits of laughter despite his obvious pain. I also had a one-on-one talk with my grandfather and told him how much he had influenced me to become the best man that I could be, and how his love, laughter, and lightheartedness had influenced and made our family great throughout his entire life. Finally, I created a video montage of my grandfather and his finest moments with us as a family. I really hope that he enjoyed every second of it. This brings me to my conclusion. A visionary. It really takes a lot for one to be referred to with this title. And through my eyes, my grandfather was a visionary. Throughout my entire life, my grandfather has been there with a lighthearted and eager spirit that has guided me along the path of life with joy and compassion in my heart. My grandfather is a person who can change your life if you really let him. And he taught me to always be resilient no matter what circumstances you are under, to always look on the bright side of life, and most importantly, to love everyone around you equally. My grandfather died on March 22nd, 2010, but his essence and life lessons live on in me still to this day, and I hope that after tonight, they live on in you a little bit too. I'll leave you with one final quote that my grandfather told me when I was a child. He said, "Kev, whatever you do, just keep on flying." And to this day, I continue to keep on flying. In the words of my grandfather.